Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. Gemini Brett here to share a few thoughts and feels and experiences from last night's Mars occultation, a lunar occultation of Mars, moon literally passing right in front of Mars. I wonder if you were able to see it where you are. Now, just like a solar occultation, a solar eclipse, planetary occultations by the moon cannot be seen everywhere on Earth. First of all, because last night's moon was full, and of course the full moon rises at sunset and sets at sunrise, or about that time. It had to be nighttime. But even beyond that, it depends where on Earth's surface you are looking from. So the example I've been using is if you are Mars and I'm on Earth and this is the moon just occulted you, Mars. But if I'm on Earth somewhere up here, I can see you above the moon. Or if I'm down here, I can see the moon above you, you see. So it was really helpful to find this map from inthesky.org, and I've shared it a bunch over the last few days, that showed us where the Mars occultation could be seen. And I'm here in the Bay Area of California, so just kind of right in the middle of that path. And indeed, as I found out yesterday and shared live at this page, the latitudes and declinations of the moon and the sun at the exact moment of their conjunction from a local point of view were exact. We were there right where the heart of the moon and the heart of Mars were one. But not the heart of Earth. And that's one thing I've really been tripping on and just like kind of bilocated yesterday in this experience was that I'm looking from the surface of Earth, not from the center of Earth, where typically we're measuring planetary placements from. And so there was a point last night, like after we had seen this occultation, this like, very real conjunction, a conjunction by latitude and longitude, or by longitude and declination alike. We saw the whole thing go down. I'll show you a little bit of a video of what we saw. And it all happened before the chart suggested the conjunction did happen. Other places on Earth experienced the conjunction after the conjunction. I know how ridiculous that sounds. And this is one of the results of parallax. So I want to share with you also that this is this thing that I've kind of realized and I should have known going in, because I know occultations of the sun, a solar eclipse, right? Moon occulting sun, their paths always move from the west to the east. And that was definitely true. I found out last night. Over here in the Bay, we experienced the conjunction before the conjunction. Over in London, the conjunction happened after the conjunction. I know how ridiculous that sounds, but look, it's a Gemini occultation, okay? And then there's places here in Canada that experience the conjunction during the conjunction. So I'll show you what that's about. But let's start off with some pics, some video, and then I'll share some of the experiences that I had energetically, which seemed to really resonate. Oh, looks like we have a visitor in this picture. And then I'll share a little bit more about this astronomy of parallax and why I'm just like currently bilocated and absolutely tripping. So I hope this young lady's okay with being shown here in a live stream. I guess that's what happens when you run in front of a camera. But who am I to set up a camera on a tripod in a public place? This public place is the Cesar E. Chavez Memorial Solar Calendar at Cesar E. Chavez Park in the Berkeley Marina, in Berkeley, California. In fact, this tower that you see here, almost due east, is the clock tower at the University of California at Berkeley. So this is Berkeley. Oakland's over here to our right. We'll turn around and look at San Francisco in a bit. You can see that the sun's about to set, right? You see how some of these different windows here on the Berkeley Hills, which are aligned to the sun at this time, are illuminated, right? And actually, I really appreciate this model here, who you can see is running from the left to the right, and that's what well, all planets will rise in the east and move towards the south in the northern hemisphere of the sky. They all culminate in the south and then of course set in the west. But our sun here is showing, our daughter here is showing us the movement of the sun from summer solstice through the equinox to winter solstice. That's what these stones are. This memorial solar calendar was actually established by a professor at the University of California, I believe. And it's pretty cool. This actually is not its original location at this park. From what I understand, it was like moved up onto this hill later on. But it's pretty cool how they've aligned it so the clock tower is almost due east, and certainly part of the University of Berkeley is. How do I know? Because this is the east stone. It is the equinox stone. Whereas this stone over here on our left, that is the northern extreme of the zodiac. That's the Tropic of Cancer. So that's where the sun rises at summer solstice time, northern hemisphere summer solstice time, and the sun ingresses Cancer, right? And then it's going to travel south and then set well north of west. That's the long trip. Whereas December solstice or Capricorn solstice or solstice, winter solstice in the northern hemisphere, the sun rises over here well south of east and then sets well south of west. So it takes the short trip from the southeast to southwest, where the summer solstice is the long trip northeast to south to northwest. Okay, so we'll turn around and we'll see equivalent stones on the other side. And I didn't edit any of these, so we're just going to flip through a bunch. I think these were either friends of our last star or maybe one and the same in another. So here we have sunset. I know it. One of these I took an HDR. Yeah, this wizard decided to sit on the west stone, but what are you going to do, right? Who am I to put the tripod in a public space? It's hard to see the sun exactly, but basically this gentleman here is sitting on the equinox stone. So if it was equinox time, either Aries equinox when the sun is moving north to its northern extreme at Cancer ingress, or Libra equinox when the sun is moving through the due west setting on its way south to the Capricorn ingress, and the sun's very close to that now, right? We're 15 days away from December solstice, even less. This was December 7th, 2022, so 14. And importantly, as the sun is moving north for 6 months and then south for 6 months, at the extremes, it has to stop and turn around. Tropikos is Greek for turnaround. Solstice is Latin for the sun stops, right? Sun stops moving south as it has been for 6 months on the horizon and stops and turns around and moves north. So at the stopping points, at the tropics, like the movement is so slow from day to day that you can see that the sun is, I mean, from all intents and purposes, seemingly already setting on the solstice stone. It's one of the reasons why keeping a horizon calendar like this is still kind of a tricky thing to do. Another reason is, mountains and whatnot. And they're lower here. This is Mount Tamalpais across the bay. This is the Golden Gate Bridge, by the way. So the sun was just setting into the, like the Presidio in San Francisco from this particular point of view. And these particular stones were laid out mathematically. So Anna was the first to see moonrise over here in the northeast. And one thing I was excited to see was that moon, who was extremely out of bounds north during this occultation, so Mars was too last night. I was excited to see moon rise further north than the sun ever can, so further left of this Cancer stone. But she did not, and the reason is, though she did somewhere down here, by the time we could see moon climbing up over the Berkeley Hills, she's already along on her path towards culminating in the south, right? So she basically, by the time she rose in the hill, seems to be right on the Cancer stone, which is a cool thing. These stones were laid out mathematically. Many of the old stone circles might be done so, like aligned to the cardinal directions, but many of them also had alignments to your actual experience. So instead of equinox being aligned due east, you would say, oh, well, like, where is the sun rising on equinox day? And that's going to be a little bit towards the south, because the sun will already be moving that way to culminate at midday. As soon as it's rising, or even before it's rising, it's moving from the north at the IC to the south at the MC. So it's moved from the east by the time it can climb a hill like this, right? So some of the old stone circles, you would actually just align to your visible experience rather than just kind of the mathematical calculation. All right, so here's moon coming up a little bit more. I've taken pictures from here where the moon seemed almost twice as big at supermoon time, and this was almost anything but. When the moon is conjoined Lilith on the chart wheel, and here she was 40 degrees away at novile, that means moon is furthest from Earth and therefore visibly smaller. Also slower. The moon's average movement is 13 1/3 degrees per day, and at this time the moon was moving, I think, only 10. Do we see that here? Yeah. Oh no, my bad. The moon's traveled 12 degrees in 11 minutes per day. Although I'm interested in seeing, because I thought I had seen 10 before, and that might be a parallax thing. Yep, less than 10 degrees per day when we consider parallax. What is parallax? Well, we're going to get back to that, and that's going to help me defend those weird statements I made before of moon, that we saw the conjunction before the conjunction. Well, other places on Earth would have seen the conjunction after the conjunction. Okay, so let me go back there. A little more picture pages still. You can see that the sun is still up, that some of these windows are still illuminated, right? I think we're going to follow the moon a little bit further. Yeah, moon, and many of us were remarking last night that the moon is like kind of small for a full moon. And literally that's true. When the moon is at Lilith, that's the moon in her elliptical path about the Earth, if you use that model, furthest away from Earth, and literally smaller in our sky. If the moon was exactly conjunct the sun at the time, right, a solar eclipse, which of course a full moon can't do, only new moon can, right? Moon conjunct sun. But if the moon's like near Lilith like this, then you can't have a total solar eclipse. You get the annular, the ring of fire solar eclipse, because the moon is further from Earth, apparently smaller in our sky, and too small, therefore, to occult the entire solar disk. This is full moon time anyway, and certainly the moon can never look small enough not to be able to occult the entirety of Mars if their hearts align. All right, onward. So we look back to the west, so that's fun. I'm going to work on that. That image, these new signs at the Cesar Chavez Memorial Solar Calendar are wonderfully descriptive, not only on like how the astronomy of the site works, but also some of why they've chosen words like what is it? Tolerance, Is that right? Anyway, there's 4 words like from Cesare Chavez principles that are aligned to the cardinal directions, which is cool. And these signs speak about it. I mean, as much as I really don't want us to fall prey to QR code reality, I wish they were that instead, because they are quite kind of blatant and really take you out of the stone circle vibe, don't they? Anyway, Photoshop, I think, will let me bring this alive with this man in his elf wizard hat and the dog, and probably take that sign away. That sounds like part of my future if time will allow. So just to show that this is like the last moment of the setting sun, at least from this point of view, and because it's setting into that's low altitude hill of San Francisco over there. And you can see that it isn't quite aligned to the center of the stone yet. All right. Moon, even when she's small, she's so big as she's rising. And you can see the moon in this kind of pink purple hue. That's the belt of Venus, or the shadow of Earth over there. It's a pretty one. All right, now we are looking back to the west because there was a fun thing to see. This huge cargo ship was sailing, I think, away from the bay, like through the Golden Gate, which leads out to the Pacific Ocean, yeah. And so though we can't see the sun anymore, it's set back behind this hill, it's still reflecting off of that boat. I thought that was super cool. And that's, an important thing to say as well. These stones, once again, are like mathematically lined. I'm circling the stone with my mouse here. And though the sun is kind of on that stone, and again, we're so close to solstice time, the sun has already basically stopped to turn around and move the other direction. People always teach it's like 3 days. Go experience it, and you'll see the sun just parks for some time. There will be visible movement, but importantly, we see the kind of last image of the sun here on San Francisco at this time. But as we saw in that later photo, like the sun's still shining off of that boat, like well after it disappears. And the sun is still moving towards the north as it's setting. It culminates in the south, always any place north of the Tropic of Cancer, like San Francisco and Berkeley, right? And then it's going to come down to the west and head north down below ground to the IC. So the sun is still moving, just barely away from that solstice stone. All right. I'm always trying to teach about this calendar while I'm on the site, and it's notoriously windy, so all the videos are always terrible. It's nice to be able to talk about it without the wind just blowing up the mic. And what a beautiful day it was yesterday. We got so lucky. It has been raining a ton. It started raining last night after I was coming home. It's been raining hard all day, and we need the rain, but I was really praying that we would have a clear one yesterday so I could finally see a lunar occultation. I've had many opportunities, but clouds have occulted the occultation from my point of view every time so far. So I was really glad to have been able to see it and to see it with some other star seekers. All right, so here the sun is set from our local point of view, and yet not, right? The ship showing us that the sun is still barely above the horizon somewhere over there. All right, now we see Mars. So moon here, obviously, that's the one that looks like the moon. And they're both in this kind of belt of Venus, the pink and the purple shadow of Earth. Literally, the shadow of Earth's rocky body projected onto her own atmosphere. And there you see Mars. Right, so moon rose first and then Mars rose. And according to the primary direction, which is the spinning of the sky resulting from the daily spinning of the Earth, they will, of course, move from the east to the west, right? Rising in the east and resting in the west in the northern hemisphere. That's the clockwise motion, culminating in the south, right? So rooting in the north, rising in the east, culminating in the south, resting in the west. And yet this occultation will give us the opportunity to witness 2 motions. That primary motion, the spinning of the sky due to the daily spin of the Earth, the daily motion, that brings the planets every day through the houses, right? But also the secondary motion, which is the movement through the signs. And the signs are west to east. Moon moves most quickly through the signs, getting through the zodiac in a month. For Mars, it takes more than 2 years. So moon, as together they are moving from the east to the west, the moon will also be visibly seen moving from the west to the east in such a way that she will literally pass right over Mars. That's what an occultation is. Most conjunctions don't do that. Most conjunctions, like moon, will conjoin a planet and either just kind of pass above or pass below. That, of course, is true for most new moons. Moon is above sun or below sun, depending on where on Earth you are looking from, and therefore no eclipse for you. When the moon and the sun meet near a lunar node, the crossing points of the paths of the moon and the sun from our point of view, then we get shadow play, we get an occultation, we get an eclipse, right? And all sorts of wonderful astronomy needs to be honored for a moon and a planet like Mars to have an actual conjunction, not only by longitude, which is zodiac degree, but also by latitude, which is distance north or south of the ecliptic, the path of the sun, the heart of the zodiac. Or we can also look at the calculation, the conjunction by declination, which is the distance north or south of the celestial equator, Earth's equator projected into the space. And all that was happening last night for Moon and Mars from this particular Earth surface point of view. All right, so Moon and Mars, the main event, although I think we will turn around here. That's a nice one. Moon, so beautiful. Because one of the things I was so excited to see and show last night was Venus and Mercury. And I was not able to see Mercury in space with my face. Interesting, I had seen him here the day before, and it helped me love the hills that we have pretty close to our house in the west, right? So things set before they set, but that also means like the setting sun like gets dimmed because it's blocked by those mountains. And so I was really learning to honor that more last night, which was nice. So let me rewind one. Yeah, here we see the full Golden Gate, not in focus, but here's Seagull. All right, this is Venus that I'm circling here. And let's go down one. Here's Venus, pretty visible now. This might be Mercury. No, I can't tell. And I wish I had gotten, that's a lot of Venus. Not as easy to see with the naked eye. I'm zoomed in here with the camera some. Look at Venus is on her way to set into Alcatraz. I had not noticed that last night. Venus out of bounds in Sagittarius, a sign of freedom and travel, and she's set into Alcatraz. I wish I had gotten like that wide view to show the solstice stones. This is the last moment of Venus here, setting right into the trees of the marina, it would seem. Oh, maybe that wasn't, because how could I shoot Venus again afterwards? Oh, that's Mercury. So I couldn't see Mercury with my eye, but the camera picked him up. Yeah, because that photo is definitely in a time after this one. And see Venus's altitude here. Like she can't go back up. What goes down must keep going down. See how that one's higher? Yeah, I'm more zoomed out, aren't I? Trying to see, yeah, this is like the Palace of Fine Arts over here, if you know the bay. And we see Venus is over here towards the north, towards the Golden Gate Bridge from the Palace of Fine Arts. And then in this next shot, right above the Palace of Fine Arts there is, I'm sure that must be Mercury. This is later in the day. That's a plane, by the way. Venus will be that bright for our naked eye pretty soon. All right, so turn back to the east for the main event, and you're just going to see Moon getting closer and closer now. That's a pretty good one. And then only Moon. Okay, so let me show you these videos. then we'll talk a little bit about what happened there. In this video, I think I'll dim it down. Let's find out. Oh, let me mute these. I mean, you hear the wind. It's actually a lot less windy there than it usually is, but I'm glad I brought a lot of layers. It's cold. And I just for the first time was playing with a star tracker on the tripod, right, which moves with the rotation of the Earth. But you have to align it to the equator by shooting this laser at the North Star, and it's like not that easy. And so you're gonna see this first one, like the moon's gonna go up and off the screen during the course of the play. I will eventually, let me speed these up, and we'll just see moon. In the secondary motion now moving through the signs or the degrees or the minutes of the degrees or the seconds of the minutes of the degrees much faster than Mars does. In fact, Mars at this time, because Earth is passing Mars by, just as it is with a car on the highway that you know is going forward, when you pass it, it appears to look like it's moving backwards. That's why Mars is currently retrograde. So not only is Moon moving so much more quickly in the zodiacal order through the degrees and minutes and all that, Mars is actually moving very slowly in the opposite direction, right? So they're on this, you could call it a crash course if you want, but maybe we'll say they're just so excited to embrace. Right, so that moon is going off the screen means that I still need to learn how to get this sky rotator situation sorted out. So there you can see I'm zooming out and whatnot, and the video ends. All right, so we'll go to the next one. Still before the occultation. 30 minutes, so let's speed this one up. I think that might be, there we go. We'll do 10 times speed, all right? And so this was a tricky thing to film. The moon, who is actually a little dimmer when she's small, when she's near Lilith, so far from Earth, at her apogee, the place in her orbit where she's furthest from Earth, she's a little dimmer too, but it could have fooled me, like blinding bright, So the camera lets me not only zoom in, but take less light into the lens, and I wish I could do that with my eyeballs sometimes. And so as I shut the aperture down a little bit and make the settings shift so that the sensor in the camera is receiving a little bit less light. I'm also dimming Mars, right? So that's kind of the give and take in this art, and I'm speaking this way. This is the challenge of bringing a camera out to a planet party. I'm not as present as I once was. I mean, the nice thing here is this is like a 30-minute video, and I'm sitting with some friends, on a blanket, just experiencing the thing. So the videos help me be more present, or time lapses or whatever. But it is like a weird complication to bring a camera into the whole scene. But I'm so excited to share. Now, meanwhile, I know Griffith Observatory, amongst probably many others, did a live stream of this last night, and I bet you it's 5,000 times cooler to see. So why even try? Because I'm excited to learn all this and document this and share this. There's something to it. All right, so here we go. We're in occultation time, right? So again, they're rising together from the east, going towards the south, but the moon is also fighting that motion, that primary motion, by moving so quickly in the secondary motion, which is west to east. And there's our occultation beginning. Now, the moon's got to fully pass Mars by. The moon appears typically to be half a degree of orb in our sky. So how long does that take? In this case, it took an hour. So we get to see that the moon here is still wiggling in the wind. At some point, I stopped the video. But it just seemed to be moon for some time. I want to speak a little bit more about some of the optical experiences we had. I'll share some kind of powerful and clear symbols that I experienced out there, and talking story with some friends, a phone call that I got, some other things, just in my own hallucinatory rabbit holes, as it is when I engage purposefully with the sky. This, I guess, is during the occultation, and still, here's one on the other side. No, still. It just needs to be deleted. Okay, now you can see Mars has popped out on the other side. I'm going to share this photo. This is from Andrew McCarthy, obviously through a telescope and all sorts of other things. But how amazing is this? This is a shot Andrew McCarthy got just as the occultation was finishing, just as Mars was seen to kind of be emerging from the moon after the moon had occulted Mars or hidden Mars from view. And you actually see so much of the lunar surface and, the Martian surface too. A beautiful image. I bet you Andrew McCarthy is selling prints of that one. Oh, if I had all the monies, I'd have a lot of prints. I'm going to speak about this image, but let me first just show you the video 3 here of moon popping back out the other side, or Mars popping out the other side, right? So moon, she hid Mars. And then Mars is reborn from the moon, if you will. I don't know how I'm ever going to, even if I get that rotator perfect, like in a windy place like this, it doesn't seem like it's possible to get full stillness unless the video stops as it just had. All right, here we go. So you're going to see Mars come back out on this side. There's Mars, right? And pretty cool. Like, have you learned to see the bunny in the moon? These are the bunny's ears. This is like cottontail. There's a few different ways to see the bunny, but it kind of came right out of the bunny ears, right? Love that. And then it's like this for a bit, and you'll see over the course of this, I think it's a half-hour video, now we're going at 30 times speed. There's some clouds. Moon came back out. I mean, sadly, because the camera's taking video, I can't get stills. I had another camera going because the clouds, there was completely clear before the occultation, during the occultation, and just as Mars kind of re-emerged from the moon, then these clouds came and just made all of these beautiful shapes. And where this was happening in the sky, like Aldebaran, the eye of the bull, which is my rising sign, was on one side. And then the horns of the bull on the other. Let me show that image again, because this is something I think that was really profound about the occultation. Now, I wasn't seeing it full rainbow like this. That's just like some part of that has to do with the camera, but also the clouds at that moment. But one thing that I think we were all remarking on, that the moon's bright white reflection of sunlight, so much brighter than Mars's red, right? And Anna was remarking on how red Mars seemed next to the moon. But in my experience, because I've been spending so much time with Mars in the sky, what I noticed is the moon was muting the redness of Mars. It was Mars, who's also reflecting sunlight to us, right, from much further away, and in a very kind of rusty iron red surface, we get this beautiful red coming off of Mars, like blood red. But a moon kind of came in to shift that Martian light. And it really brought in like a physical, sensual experience of a conjunction. You know, I mean, we'll say in the astrological symbolism that moon, who's like said to be of the watery temperament, cold and wet. Now, when she's full, that's kind of like the fire stage of the moon cycle. But regardless, in general, moon is said to be kind of mucousy and cold and wet, silver, right? Where Mars is said to be hot and dry. So this is like moon cooling Mars off. And maybe you could say Mars heating the moon up. But the visible experience is definitely more the former. That's typically how that's used in elections. How it would maybe translate more in a horary, and I'd say in natal charts too, that the moon can cool Mars down. But we could visibly see it. It's like Mars's light had to go through that silver filter and get cooled until moon was far enough from Mars again for Mars to appear. All right. So this whole thing went down for us locally between 6:30 p.m. is when the occultation started, and 7:30 p.m. is when Mars reappeared. Okay. Well, notice you see here on the chart 8:18 p.m. What? That's why I said we saw the occultation before the occultation. Anna and I were walking hurriedly back to the car to get out of the cold at this point. The whole crew had already dispersed. We were last because I was packing up the tripod and all that. And I was like, hey, we've got to stop for a bit because like this is the moment of the conjunction. She's like, what? So I think let me get back to that. I want to share a couple of the things of the experience. Well, no, we're going to do that all at once, says the Gemini chart. So here is the wonderful Stellarium astronomy software. I'm going to head to Berkeley where we were last night, so close. And then I will go back to like yesterday. Oh, great. Right at like 6 p.m. Okay, so there is this moon Mars, right? And as I said, around 6:30 p.m., we saw moon start to cover Mars up. Let me actually just move through time. You can watch the clock here if you would like, right? 18 is 6 p.m., yes? And you're going to see not what the video showed. You're seeing moon pass above Mars, north of Mars. This yellow line or really curve here, that's the ecliptic. That's the path of the sun, the heart of the zodiac. I'm going to retrograde or rewind time now. So these are both moon and Mars are north of the ecliptic. But moon is further north of the ecliptic. That's a measurement called celestial latitude. Longitude is along the ecliptic from 0 degrees tropical Aries. You know, you probably know that as zodiac degree. So we see the moon here at 76 longitude, which means 16 Gemini. 30 plus 30 plus 16. Aries plus Taurus plus 16 Gemini, okay? And then about 3 degrees north of the ecliptic plane. This seems like good get the circle thing out time, all right? Whereas Mars at this time, also 76 degrees celestial longitude, which is 30 plus 30 plus 16, is Aries plus Taurus, and 16 tropical Gemini, but only 217 north of the ecliptic plane. We're going to see that confirmed here in Astro Gold software. Let's check out the moon's latitude, 249 minutes in a degree, so about 3 degrees north, whereas Mars is 217, so they're about a half a degree away from a conjunction by latitude, even though they're conjoined by longitude, and so no occultation for you. But we just watched the video, right? I wish I had time-stamped it so you could see that it also happened before this. I'm going to go here to 8:18 p.m. What do we have on the chart? 1835. Okay. So this is the moment of the conjunction. If you measure from the center of the Earth, okay, which is what geocentric means. Some softwares will allow for topocentric calculations, which is the surface of the Earth. This particular software, AstroGold, does not, and yet it also does because it gives you the opportunity to turn on the parallax moon. And that's exactly what the parallax moon does. The moon is close enough to Earth that the difference between Earth's distance from the center of the Earth, geocentric, and the surface of the Earth, topocentric, will literally create a difference in the experience of where the moon is against the backdrop of the night sky. Not only that, but the moon is close enough to the Earth that when we look at moon from one surface location on Earth versus another, we will experience the moon against a different place in the backdrop of the night sky. You know, I want to, because this recent lunar eclipse actually gave an opportunity to see just that. And I saved an image from another wonderful, the same wonderful astrophotographer, Andrew McCarthy. And I'm seeing one here. You don't see what I'm sharing right now. Here, we'll actually just stop the share. I'm searching the files, y'all. Let me see if I look at parallax. Let me go to Andrew's website. As long as we're looking at his photos, we should all go there. Andrew McCarthy astrophotography, cosmicbackground.io. So this image from the recent blood moon here is like so epic. I mean, not only does the moon just look so great, and then she goes through the shadow of Earth, but the way that he stacked these over time, you can actually see the size of Earth's shadow compared to the moon. I love that so much. But there's this other one. Oh, you know what? Maybe this other one was not Andrew McCarthy. Let me stop this again, because I really want to show you this. I know I had posted it on my socials, so I'm going to go back in time to a month ago, the last full moon, so we can find this image of parallax, which was really amazingly done. Here, okay, great. So let's read this. This was from Astro Falls, New South Wales, Australia. So I'm not sure who Astro Falls is, but astrofalls.com would let us know. So more amazing prints of amazement. My name is Bray. 24-year-old astro. Dude, Bray, you've got it together. Based in Austin, Texas. Okay, so what we read here is the parallax of the eclipsed moon and stars from Australia and Arizona. During the lunar eclipse, I was capturing photos simultaneously from Australia remotely at Star Punker, and capturing photos in person in Arizona. At 3:17 a.m., I captured these two images of the totally eclipsed moon and align them by their background stars to show the effects of parallax. Since the images were captured 8,000 miles apart, the moon is actually not in the same spot in the sky from each location. the moon is closer to us than the stars. So this massive distance in capturing location leads to a perceived location change in the moon's location. Okay. All right. So excited to get a post, and maybe it didn't go through copy. I know that feeling. Anyway, just put your hand between your face and the screen and move your head around. That's parallax. Okay. So as you're moving from one location on the surface to the other, this thing, the moon, is going to be seen shifting against the backdrop out there, okay? So I read some people like complained about all this streaking, but any of the places between Arizona where one of these moons was photographed in this moment, and Australia, where the other was, like if you traveled on a straight line between the two and like were able to pause time, you would see the moon shifting against the backdrop of all these different stars. It's like a pretty amazing thing to do. I mean, just the technology that we have to bring this like astronomical experience to new light is so cool. To share, this is kind of neither here nor there, but I had this experience once, and it was kind of rude, but what are you going to do? Anna and I were flying on solstice, or maybe it was December 23rd. Yeah, we were at Chartres Cathedral outside of Paris in France. Speaking of moon, Mars, and Gemini, some police car just speeding down over there. And so we were there on the solstice. We were probably on a plane on December 23rd, and we flew from Paris to San Francisco, but we had a stop in Switzerland. And so we were flying from Switzerland to San Francisco. We must have taken off at like 2 p.m. or something, okay? But it's December solstice, and we flew north over Norway. And I love, like this plane had the screen where you could see where the plane was above the map of Earth. And so as we're flying north on December solstice, like into near Arctic latitudes, the sun set at like 3:30 p.m. or whatever, right? Like way up there in Santaland. And so then we're cruising in the darkness, and I told Anna, I was like, I bet you we are going to see the sun rise in the west. Right, because what happened is we flew from Switzerland to San Francisco, and we went like up, not right over the North Pole, but we went up into the Arctics, and then we came down over like Greenland and into Canada, and then came down, right? And so as we were flying from the east to the west, we're like fighting the spinning of Earth, right? So you're going quote unquote back in time. I mean, it's obviously the same moment of time, but if you're able to move quickly enough west, you can fight a sunset, right? Just like the sun sets in New York before it does in San Francisco, right? So as you're cruising from the east to the west, you're like, in a sense, going back in a local experience of time, right? And there's also, and it depends on the time of the year, an ability to do so by going north and south. And the extreme of that is going up over the Arctic Circle at December solstice time. And we literally saw the sun rising in the west. I've got to track down those videos because I'm shooting video at the screen. Why I said I was rude before is there was a girl like a row behind us over there who asked me to close the window. It's a long flight. She's like, my mother and I are trying to sleep. Can you please close the window? And I was like, I'm sorry, but no. Like, I've been waiting lifetimes for this. Okay, so that's why I share this story now, because it is a story of how modern technology, in this case the plane, and the ability to move really quickly and up and over the Arctic Circle at this particular time of the year actually allowed me to see a sun rising in the west, which is impossible because, of course, the Earth spins from the west to the east, which is why we see the sky rising in the east and setting in the west, yes? And it was such an amazing thing. Now, we are also having this opportunity with technology these days, and yes, of course, it is a double-edged sword, but to see things like this, like two images of the moon taken in the exact same moment. I will say, however, though, at different stages of the eclipse, because the eclipse would have been experienced in its like the full range of the eclipse would have been experienced in Australia before it was experienced in Arizona. That's what I'm learning now. So one of my favorite things about lunar eclipses, right? Unlike solar eclipses, which can only be experienced in like, kind of a limited range of places on Earth. For a lunar eclipse, clouds allowing, if it's nighttime, you're going to see it. If it's nighttime, the full moon is in your sky. No, if the full moon's in like Capricorn, there's places north of the Arctic Circle where it won't rise at all. If the full moon's in Cancer, there's places south of the Antarctic Circle where it won't rise at all. So you got me. Okay, but for the most part, if it's nighttime and the clouds allow, the full moon is in your sky. And therefore, if it's nighttime and a lunar eclipse is happening, clouds allowing, you will see it. So I used to believe we were seeing this at the same time. And because lunar eclipses, like it takes a while for moon to enter Earth's shadow and then move all the way through Earth's shadow, right? Again, like a wonderful image by Andrew McCarthy here, cosmicbackground.io, where we can literally see that Earth's shadow is much larger than the moon, right? So depending on the nature of the eclipse, the moon is going to spend some time like fully occulted during a total lunar eclipse like this, right? So where do we go in the story here? Oh, well, I want to retrograde back to an experience that I had some time ago. It was it must have been April of 2014, because I remember it as being the first of the tetrad, being 4 total lunar eclipses in a row. So no partial lunar eclipse separating the total lunar eclipses 4 in a row, a tetrad, quite a rare thing. And we had this happen in, I think it was April, October, May, October of 2014, 2015, something like that. They were in the signs of tropical Aries and Libra. And I went down to Arizona to do a talk and experience the first one. Some folks from the Northwest where I was living at the time flew down. It was great. There was one piece that was kind of a bummer because, when you get down to Arizona, especially when you're living in Seattle as I was, the sky just opens up. You get to see the Milky Way, but not at full moon time, right? The sun eats the sky. By day, there can be only one star in your sky. It's called sun. At night, of course, we can see many stars even when the moon is full and reflecting so much light. But she does hide a lot when she's full like that. So if you're going to go stargazing in a dark sky place like Arizona, Hawaii, or whatever, go at new moon. Or the days before, after, a week before, a week after. Max, don't go at full moon time, okay? But the cool thing was, after I was a little down about that, we're out for this eclipse. And it's late. I think it started like 3:30 a.m. or something like that. So we have fire going and talking story and all. Was the moon entered the shadow of Earth and started getting dimmed and going orange and red as she does, the blood moon, then stars started coming out. The Milky Way came out. It was like an amazing experience. I would definitely do that again. So why I'm sharing this at all is I had this strange experience at that time, or this kind of revelation, weirdness of realizing that like the time that the chart had suggested to me this eclipse would be centered around this lunar eclipse was not actually what we experienced or what all the astronomers were saying in the paper, And I was like, why do the astronomer times differ from what the chart says? I'm at wonderful astronomy sites like timeanddate.com showing me an animation from my local experience there in Arizona, and it's different than what the chart said. And that's where I learned the difference between geocentric, Earth center, and topocentric, Earth surface, right? We're not born at the center of the Earth. We're not watching the heavens from the center of the Earth. I don't know if you can, and yet most of us, almost all of us, are using geocentric charts. Now, I quickly came to the understanding of why we should, and that is that the center of the Earth is the one place where we are all connected. We're all Earthlings are one. And even more beautifully, that really what astrology is suggesting, since we are measuring from the center of the Earth, not the surface where we are, is we Earthlings are experiencing Earth's experience of the heavens. It ties us all together. Okay, so that, right? I'm encouraged by the truth that David Cochran, whose work I very much respect, also freaked out at some point about the parallax moon. And wouldn't it make more sense to actually measure the planets? Like the moon is the only one that is close enough to matter, but from the surface where we're actually born, not from the center of the Earth. Like we get really hung up about, oh, I wasn't just born in Boston, I was born in that room of that hospital, and this is the exact latitude and longitude. I'm like, well, why are we measuring from the center of the Earth? It's pretty far from there, right? But again, we are experiencing Earth's experience. And while I haven't heard David Cochran, go there with it, I'd be interested in talking with him about where he has gone philosophically, because he is a deep thinker. But where he did go, as he's wont to do, is into the research and looked at people who have the moon at a cusp of a sign. I'm kind of putting research in his brain at this point. I'm not exactly sure how he went about it all, but that's how I would do it. And he said that he's found through his statistical research that the geocentric, the Earth center, expression of the moon actually works better. I found one case where I wonder, and maybe we'll take the time to show that to you right now. Yeah, I think I will. All right, so let me show you. This is the amazing case of George Harrison, who was born in Liverpool, England on February 24th, 1943. And the moon was just here into Scorpio, okay? So 9 arc minutes of Scorpio. Now, that's the geocentric or Earth-centered measurement, okay? So if I relocate George, I mean, anywhere, like we could bring George, well, over to Rishikesh, India, where he was with the Maharishi for some time. That's over here. And the moon is now on high. Do you see it here in the chart, like up at the midheaven and near the top of the chart, which is always square, the ascendant. And there it is, 9 arc minutes of Scorpio. Okay, we could go over to LA, the home of George's Dark Horse Records. And the moon's down below at the non-decimal, way down below the ground, but 9 arc minutes of Scorpio, right? We can bring George to New York City, right, where the Beatles invaded. We could go down to Florida, where his bandmate Tom Petty was from, whatever. We could go to Hawaii, where George actually lived at the time of George's birth. The sun was at the midheaven. It was midday in Hawaii, okay? And where's the moon? 9 arc minutes of Scorpio, because it doesn't matter where on the surface of Earth I go if I'm measuring from the center of Earth, yes? But what if we push the parallax button? All right, and we will. So here's Astro Gold's parallax moon button, and now you'll see George's moon moves to 56 arc minutes of Scorpio. I use George as an example a lot for reasons like this. I love George's music and the Beatles' music, and there's other reasons too, but he's a really amazing chart for teaching some of the deep sacred astronomy of the moon and the sun and the earth. Anyway, my sun is at 56 arc minutes of Scorpio. So when I first pushed the parallax button for George in Liverpool, I was like, oh, no wonder we have not only like moon conjunct sun, but so conjunct the sun. And also kind of not, because the moon is not on the ecliptic plane, and by definition the sun is. The ecliptic is Earth's orbital path, or from Earth's point of view, the path of the sun about us. It's the heart of our zodiac, and the solar system is relatively flat. But all the planets have their own path, including the moon, who snakes above and below the path of the sun every month. This is why we call her nodes the dragon's head and the dragon's tail, and have so much eclipse symbolism, or dragon symbolism with eclipse. And you can see, perhaps, that George was born in eclipse season. If you can't, GeminiBrett.com/eclipse is the place for you. Okay, find some light in that shadow. Now, let's relocate George now that the parallax is turned on. And we are going to see that all of the other planets, because they're so far from us, that the difference between their distance to the center of Earth and the surface of the Earth is negligible. This is not true for the moon. So as I move George around, notice that the degree of the moon is actually going to change. Let's bring him to Rishikesh now. Or I'll bring him here, more like near Bombay, where the moon is culminating. And it's at 15 arc minutes Scorpio. I'm actually interested in seeing this. So George's geocentric moon is 9 arc minutes Scorpio. Yeah. So wherever the moon is square the ascendant, it's around here. I can't get there exactly. So if I get 09 Aquarius rising, then when the moon is highest above the ground, and that is true when she's square the ascendant descended, not at the midheaven, as too many astrologers ignorantly teach. The midheaven is not the highest part of the chart. The part square the ascendant descendant axis is. And there, dig how if I get 09 Aquarius rising, then the parallax moon is the same as the geocentric moon. Some truth about tides live there too, and I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to bring you to LA, and now we're going to see that the kind of opposite case is true. We're very close to the place where 2 Leo is or 0 Leo is rising. So we're going to get that 0 Scorpio moon down below, and there it is, 009, like the same as the geocentric calculation. But the thing I really want to show you is this. Let's go over to Hana, where George had a house in Hawaii. And of course, if I had the geocentric moon on, we would see the moon at 0 degrees, 9 arc minutes Scorpio, okay? But not with the parallax turned on. The parallax actually changes George Harrison's moon sign, right? And like literally all these different places, the moon is shifting slightly against the backdrop of stars. George is born with the moon so close to that Libra Scorpio cusp that with the parallax considered, we can actually see a sign change for the moon. Fascinatingly, Hana was a place where George went to commit more to his marriage, his second marriage with Olivia, and to his relationship with his child, Donnie, right? So I mean, check out like a Libra moon in the 5th house of children. And by the way, there was a similar story in another tropical location off the east coast of Australia, where in the time of George's birth, parallax considered, the moon was also in Libra. It's like kind of around this zone. And now the moon's in the 7th, a Libra moon in the 7th, and he's like there to like commit more to the marriage. I am so fascinated by that. So I appreciate once again the geocentric calculation philosophically, because it suggests that we on Earth's surface are all one, even if you cannot visibly experience something like last night's lunar occultation of Mars. It's bad grammar, but I like to say just because you don't see it doesn't mean you don't be it. It's an amazing thing, however, also to see it. So, but philosophically, I love at the geocentric, you know, we are really talking about our individual experience of Earth's experience of the thing. Now, that being said, you know, from one place to the next, in any given moment of time, the degree at the ascendant, which is the horoscope changes, the angles change, the placement of the planets in the houses change. Like charts are all unique for any given place on Earth. But if we consider a parallax moon, we can actually have moon change signs. I think it's just so amazing. All right, so I'm just setting up a chart on my screen here. I want to share a few experiences that I had around this eclipse. I mean, one of them is really tripping on this parallax thing. So a couple more buttons. There we go. Okay, so this is when the chart tells me this Moon-Mars conjunction's happening. If I hear there's an occultation, I'm like all excited to see it, and I go set up at this 8:18 p.m. Sorry, you missed it. All right, let me go back to Stellarium. There's this 8:18:35 p.m. locally, and Stellarium is showing us that Moon and Mars are conjunct because our conjunctions are just ecliptic longitude, right? They're like projecting to the same place of the ecliptic, which is the circumference of our chart wheel, the path of the sun. But we can see here in the points list or in Stellarium that their latitudes are different. This means also their declinations are different. Latitude is their measurement north or south of the ecliptic, the path of the sun. Declination is the measurement north or south of the celestial equator, the projection of Earth's equator into space. And we'll see that they are in the same, what's called right ascension, measurement along the celestial equator, but a different declination, distance south, or in this case, very far north of Earth's equator up here. And that means that, like, if we get over to the grid, while we see Moon and Mars are entirely conjunct, somehow it's telling me they're separating by 33 arc minutes. Oh, I see, because I have the parallax still turned on. Let me turn that off. Okay, so this is the geocentric conjunction. And now we're going to see that they're conjunct, Moon conjunct Mars, 0 degrees, right? Perfect conjunction. But now you'll see that they're not parallel. Parallel would be the same declination. You see that they're separating their 31 arc minutes out of a parallel or a quote-unquote conjunction by declination, and we will see that that's true. They're both out of bounds, by the way. They're both north of the Tropic of Cancer, as you can see here, right? Interesting, they're not right on top of one another. The Moon appears to be further north than Mars. So further north of the ecliptic, which is this curve here, or further north of the equator. Their north distance from the ecliptic is latitude. From the equator is declination, okay? And this parallels measuring declination. So a conjunction by declination will be a parallel. Let's see here, Sun and Pluto. So even though Pluto's in Capricorn and the Sun's in Sagittarius, they're similar by declination. The Sun at the time is the declination of 2242, Pluto of 2257, right? We can see in the grid that Moon and Mars are separated by 31 arc minutes of declination, and we can find that as well if we subtract 2404 from 2531. Sorry, 2459 from 2531. There's that 30. It looks like 32 degrees difference, or arc minutes difference, right? So we saw on the map, we can tell they're out of bounds north because their declination exceeds the declination of the tropic, which is equivalent to Earth's tilt angle of 23.5 degrees. Really 23 degrees, 26 arc minutes, and 15 arc seconds in our day and age. But who's counting? We are. We should if we care. Okay, anyway, back to the parallax button here. Let's do it first in Stellarium. Stellarium offers me the opportunity to look through topocentric, or Earth surface measurements, instead of geocentric, Earth surface measurements. If you play with Stellarium, by the way, it's the F2 menu, and then tools here. So I'm gonna click Topocentric, and now we're gonna see that true to my experience at 8:18, the whole thing had already happened. Okay, but this is when Anna and I stopped on the way back to the car because I was like, all right, right now is the geocentric conjunction, and this was like so Gemini. I was like totally bilocated, like in space and time. I was like, I'm watching here, and the moon is now already past Mars. I saw the moon occult Mars like some time ago, but from the center-verse point of view, this is their conjunction, and yet not in occultation. Right, so I was trying to experience all of that at the same time, and I'm lucky I have a strong woman at my side, or else I probably would have gone mad. Well, fuck, maybe I have. No time for that. Okay, let's go back here, and we're going to look at this from Parallax, okay? And I think the Astro Gold will let me say moon can join Mars with the parallax button on. Yeah, and there we go. It was 7:05 p.m. Okay. And so now I want to share a few of the things that resulted as I was watching this with some crew. Maybe you saw my live I put out a couple days ago. It's been in different places. Also at the community discussions for NCGR San Francisco, our local chapter of the National Cosmic Council of Geocosmic Research that I'm currently the president of. And I just instead extended an invite, hey, if you're around the Bay, come on out. This is where I'm going to be if the skies are clear. Indeed, the skies were clear, and a bunch of students from my School of Earth Astrology, along with some folks I've never met yet, and some who I have once and have not, and all the things came. We had a really nice small group and gathering. And, I was contemplating, I was sharing some things about this, feels like a war of the words. That came up in some interesting places, like subtly, and we'll put that aside. But there were a couple of really interesting things that I experienced. So one, first of all, my natal, is my chart up here? My natal series is at 15 arc minutes Gemini. The geocentric conjunction, like even more than this thing, is that it? Well, was at like 16 Gemini. I mean, it was right on my natal series. And one of the new friends that came out, who I hadn't met before, she's really deep into the asteroids. It's just kind of like a series specialist. So that was so if you're hearing this, it was so cool to meet you as I shared last night. Wow, this thing's like right on my series. So that was an interesting connection. Somebody on my socials had spoken about Moon and Mars and how Moon is the left eye, and my reply was, well, traditionally it's said to be the sun is the right eye of a man and the moon the left eye, and for a woman the moon is the right eye and the sun is the left eye. And are we allowed to say that anymore anyway? Maybe the rules of medical astrology will change, I don't know. But interestingly, moon, who we know can also be a symbol for mother. Sometimes Ceres is seen that way too. And Mars, can irritate and bring fire and redness. My mother is having some currently undiagnosed issues with her eyes, and she went yesterday to a doctor who had recently performed the cataract surgery and complaining. And I, during the occultation, got a call from my stepdad, from her husband, saying that it looks a little worse than they had thought. And so I'm like, that's as much as I want to share about that right now. But anyway, I had some like pretty deep news about my mom, like during this gathering and during this occultation. I mean, interesting where we were, Cancer was also rising. Pisces culminated during the occultation, right? So here's 7:05, which is the middle of the occultation. But if I go back to like 6:30-ish when it began, we saw Neptune was right at the midheaven, and then Jupiter culminated during it, right? So, yeah, there was this interesting series connection, and for me, a conjunction, and then, yeah, I received this tricky notice about my mother. I'll say like the moon actually then moved on to trine Saturn after the conjunction, and yeah, well, I'll just share. My mom had a bone marrow transplant some time ago, and there's some fear that this is actually her body starting to reject the transplant now. And right, so Saturn would be the bones in the Aquarius kind of technology realm. So the moon after the exact conjunction then would be between Mars and Saturn. Traditionally, that's besieged by the malefics, and I had a personal experience, or an experience of my mother's experience, at least the fear of what it might be there. Okay. I share another thing that what I found was so interesting was that two of the folks who came out and I've talked to both of them about this in readings, have had floods at their home and now have been displaced to live in a place while they're dealing with the insurance and the what's it called, remediation, and getting their, the mold out and the place is ready for them to move back in. And we were tripping on, well, what an interesting coincidence, right? Of two of you here in this small group have had this flood experience. Well, dig how where we were on Earth, and we don't see it in the geocentric chart where Leo was rising at the time of the geocentric conjunction at 8:18 p.m. But we did see it here with Parallax, consider the topocentric moon, that Cancer water is rising with the hidden things signature here, and then Pisces culminating, right? And then, one was of the two was having a very good experience with insurance companies, and the other one, like maybe not so much, still kind of up in the air. And, maybe some of what was transmitted by the one who is having a good experience goes there. I don't know. Anyway, and her husband, I think they're married. I got to be careful. Anyway, her partner works for East Bay Mud, the municipal water district here. Right? It's like, okay, like this is all interestingly watery, and where do we see that? Maybe in the moon anyway, but we see it in the local angles, right? The moon south node in Scorpio too. Okay. Then the other very fascinating thing for me, and things come in twos with Gemini often. And it totally did. One, there's two folks here, and it was more for them to connect through. They're both, by the way, musicians. One is an incredible harp player, another like, accordion player who's wanted to play harps, and maybe they'll start a study. But so we have these two who are engaging around like the flood experience. And then throughout the night as well, one of the attendees, one of the friends, had recently lost a horse that's been with her for a Saturn orbit, like 29 years. And he was 33 and a third years old, she shared, and he passed. And I, just completely ignorant, did not know, though I've seen, I'm not sure I've ever seen a horse laying down except for on TV or whatever, but like I didn't know that horses sleep standing up. She was explaining that like if a horse lays down for too long, they can't get back up, especially when they're older, and like that's what had happened. And so I was just like intrigued by this idea of like, needing to be up on your feet, and like four legs, right? It's like you can see like two beings in Gemini there, and just this idea of like if you're not mobile, moving, then there's challenge there, right? So then the other was a brother there that was there. I hope, yeah, if this feels okay to share, I sure hope that's true. But he had spent some time in the brig in Navy, right? And I was asking him like, what's that like? And he was actually in like the brig on an aircraft carrier. And I was like, they let you like play cards with the other people. He's like, dude, no. He's like, there's literally footprints on the ground and you have to stand in place. Like, what? Right? And then it shared a bunch of other things. We looked at his chart a little bit. It was interesting where I was seeing that. But God, could you imagine, like, not only are you like in a cell, but you actually have to stand up and you're being monitored to make sure you're standing in place. But see the interesting symbol there of the horse that like stands all the time, even when they sleep, and then this like Navy brig where the prisoner has to stand all the time. And meanwhile, there's this Moon Mars conjunction in Gemini. I'll be tripping on that for days, weeks, months, maybe years, and then finally we'll receive the message. Now, if I had sat home and meditated instead of going out to witness this thing, would the news I heard about my mom be the same? I will say also that I sent along some links to some internet spots saying like, hey, people who have had a particular treatment have been having, that my mom have been having some kind of fallout with her eyes and some weird things and burning eyes. And maybe you want to consider that before you go like deep into the fear place of this is a result from the transplant or something, because there's other people having this experience that didn't have a transplant, and maybe it's like just as scary but maybe not as much. And I think the links that I sent over, probably in the climate of our times, and this goes back to the things I've been saying about this Moon Mars conjunction and the trine to Saturn in Aquarius as an opportunity and a way to make this good for us, but the squares with the Pisces planets, in particular Jupiter, and that Mars and Moon who are in Gemini are out of bounds, and Mercury sign is out of bounds in Capricorn. So a lot of things I was saying is like, learn to see the light in them instead of trying to bring them to the light. I'm not sure that me sending texts obey that invitation, right? I would like to think so, but I might have caused more stress. I'm not sure, and I should check in, but it's tricky times we're navigating our ways through, right? So anyway, if I was just meditating at home, maybe I would have learned about horses standing. Maybe I would have learned about Navy brig. I don't think so. And, for me, and Gemini can be such a social thing. And interestingly, geocentrically, it was in the 11th, which is part of the thing that inspired for me. Like, oh, I gotta like get a gathering together. Like, everyone's invited. Let's see who shows up. And it was really fun to see who did show up. Like, I love just kind of the mysteriousness of all that. But, being there, like, I was able to receive these little glimpses of the code. That's how I learn astrology. Like, that will teach me the astrology. And while I can see some of these things in the chart, like the things I can't yet see are what I will learn that will make me better at my art. All right. I did have this morning like an amazing revelation that I literally woke Anna up saying Eureka. But it wasn't about this occultation per se, although it was about occultations because it was an eclipse thing and a moon thing. And anyway, I'm very excited to show that to the students who are currently at the School of Earth Astrology, which is my school. You can find out about that, by the way, at my website, which is GeminiBrett.com. Just go over to the courses page and you can learn about the School of Earth Astrology and my sacred astronomy class, which is currently hosted at Astrology Hub. And speaking of, I'm going to be doing a forecast event with a lot of my favorite peeps this Saturday, December 10th at 3 p.m. Pacific. Please use this link if you want to register. It's a free thing. So astrologyhub.com/2023Brett with 2 T's, Gemini T's will get you there. I get extra high fives if you register through that link. We're going to talk about what's alive next year. Some pretty crazy astrology. So come join us there. Okay. Latest Canada news. Why? Why that? Okay. So the last thing we'll do here today. Oh, well, let me just say about that revelation of eclipses. I do have, you can't find these on my site right now. They're occulted, but I am in the midst of teaching eclipse and eclipse cycles classes. Definitely not too late to join. And I advertised 4 hours for Enter the Dragon, and it's 9 hours of stuff is posted. And we've already done our 4 hours for Return of the Dragon eclipse cycles, and there's going to still be 1 or maybe even 2 live classes, and it'll be long. So it's definitely not too late to join that. Come on in. All the stuff that's been recorded will be available to you as soon as you do join, and you get there by going GeminiBrett.com/eclipse. All right. And you'll get an offer to dive in here. If you join Enter the Dragon for that, you will get an offer to join half price for the Return of the Dragon. So half of that very kind of eclipsey number for reasons that I will soon reveal. And I will also reveal, which had me wake Anna up with a eureka this morning. It was a really deep and profound thing that I've just been waiting for. I'm so excited to share. Okay, so why Canada? Because what I was looking at yesterday, I did a couple places. So here's this geocentric conjunction moment, okay? So 8:18:35 p.m. Pacific. But when we go topocentric, I can see that the moon has already passed Mars by. Let me zoom in on these characters and rewind time. And this is true to the experience we had. The occultation started around 6:30. Was fully centered at 7:05 p.m. locally. Right? We can't see because the moon is there, but Stellarium will actually let me like supersize Mars. And we happen to be in this place, and I saw this playing with Stellarium and whatnot, because the Bay Area where I live is right in the middle of this curve, okay? Well, it seems like London is too, maybe more like northern Scotland. Well, let's go to Edinburgh, okay? So this is like the moment, 7:05 p.m., where we see the geocentric conjunction locally. Let me go there. All right, and now that we're, sorry, not geocentric, topocentric, surface, parallax. Okay, now let's look at those points list. The moon, a latitude of 217, Mars, 217. The moon's declination, 2459, Mars, 2459. They are exactly parallel, right? Which we see here in the grid as well. So an exact conjunction, an exact parallel, that is a straight up occultation, like the heart of the moon, the heart of Mars, not the heart of Earth though, right? Let me unsupersize Mars, like from the center of Earth, I had to be at this place on Earth's surface. From the center of the Earth, geocentric, it actually wasn't an occultation at all. I think that's an amazing thing. Okay, and only certain places on Earth's surface were able to experience this occultation at all. One of them was Edinburgh in Scotland. Let's head there now. So I'm going to go actually to the geocentric conjunction moment, which in Pacific time was 8:18:35 p.m. because Stellarium will automatically adjust for the time zone when we head over to Edinburgh. Okay, now here, the occultation hasn't happened yet. Moon is still west of Mars. So if I zoom in Moon here, we're going to see for them, the topocentric, the parallax occultation is happening sometime around here. And indeed, that does look like the middle of the moon, the middle of the Mars, okay? And this is why earlier I was saying, look, we here in Richmond, California, we experienced the occultation 7:05 p.m., where the geocentric conjunction of Moon and Mars was 8:18 p.m. Like we experienced the full occultation before the conjunction. Whereas let's go to Edinburgh now. This, that. Now I'm going to have to spell. And I missed. Yeah. Let me just make sure that's real by confirming some longitude, latitude. Yeah, 55, 57, 311. We're there. Okay. Now, see, the moon has not yet gotten to Mars, right? If I look at parallax. So, when do they? Well, let's go moon conjoin Mars with the parallax button turned on. And we will find that is, maybe I have to do that manually. Sometime around here at 5:35 a.m. So there's actually 5:20. Right, experientially, we can look at the points list. We see the declination of the moon 2458, of Mars 2459. Like, it's a perfect parallel. They're right in the heart of that path too. But if we go geocentric, so we turn the parallax off, well, the moon-Mars conjunction had already happened, right? So they were experiencing the occultation after the conjunction, where we over here in California experienced it before the conjunction. I think this has to do with Earth's spin, and I think that this is always going to be true, that in an occultation, wherever the western limit is going to experience it before the thing, and the eastern limit is going to experience it before the geocentric conjunction, and then right in the middle, they'll experience it during the geocentric conjunction. Okay, so we're going to go one other place, and it's to Canada. So here's Ottawa, Ontario. And while we're not right there, let me do this. I'm going to go back to Berkeley, because I just know that it's at 2018, 8:18 p.m. And then let's go to Canada. I think like St. John's is closer. Okay. So there, the parallax wasn't quite happening at that same time. I can get like more dialed into a relocation, and what I found is earlier as I was playing is that north of there, the occultation's happening, and then maybe west of this place, here, the occultation was happening at the same time that the geocentric conjunction was happening. And then I wondered, does that mean somehow this is going to have a greater quote unquote effect on Canada? And I'm interested in seeing, it's like not exactly where. Well, let me see. Hold on. If I go back to the parallax time, locally, but it wouldn't be local. No, it should be this time. Yeah, so right, it's on this line of their midheaven lines where the occultation was experienced on the surface, topocentric at the same time as the geocentric conjunction, right? And so that had me, granted the capital of Canada, Ottawa's a little further afield or whatever, but I was just playing today with, what happened in Canada last night and this morning. So things like the largest government misallocation in history. So something about the monies. This one was interesting. This is this Jordan Peterson thing. In a university, all perspectives are valid. No, that's not necessarily true, Lindsay. This is not Jordan Peterson. This is a woman who got in trouble for playing a Jordan Peterson video in her class at the university. You can check that out. Some of these news, it's like really interesting, kind of super Gemini and super moon Mars, including a headline that is a little too maybe heavy to report, but I'd encourage you to check it out. So geocentrically, this thing just happens in a moment. It's not an occultation at all. On the surface, there's different places where the occultation can be experienced. And then my question is, in the only places where the occultation is experienced at the same time that the geocentric conjunction of Moon Mars is happening, would it make that place on Earth more aligned to / susceptible to